we're here to have a bit of a discussion about Build and just take a look at some, some things that I have experienced and that I get the questions that I get a lot, and how to customize our cost management experience, basically. So I want to bring in some insights, questions that I get from clients during integrations and how we go about addressing those, what we are implementing, how to really make this system your own in order to get the kind of quotes we're looking for, as in that people are very excited about this software. So I'll jump into it here as soon as I can figure out where my PowerPoint went. There it goes. So we're just going to have a little brief intro to everything. I do that every time. We'll have a bit of a cost use discussion and time for Q&A at the end. I do love to talk, but maybe we'll keep this one brief. All right. So if you are not familiar or if you're new-ish to the Construction Cloud, there's a lot of elements to it. So we start at docs with our kind of base level platform. That's file management, transmittals, submittals, model review, that sort of thing, markups. We go up a couple of levels to Collaborate and Collaborate Pro, which start to bring in design elements from our Revit and design side of things, so we can bring Revit models into the cloud and use the documents created from those models for all of the other things, like back in the docs and the file review, the clash detection in Collaborate. And then moving forwards, we have, again, access to those models and the sheets coming from those models in Takeoff for our quantification tools, and Build and Cost, which is what we're talking about today, coming from the package of Build, which is our project management system, all in the Construction Cloud. If you have any questions, pop them into the Q&A chat. Misty will take care of them during presentation, or we can wait till the end. Misty, you can interrupt me at any time if there's any questions that seem relevant. And a little summary about Cost then. So Cost is our cost tracking software. We are going to get our GCs in there, project managers, project engineers. We're not really going to have our accounting people in there. They're going to stay in their software. We're going to work with our construction team in our construction management software. And we're ideally going to have some sort of integration between them to transfer all of that data back and forth. So everybody can kind of stay where they're familiar and but share that data equally. So cost includes docs. That comes with everything. We have budget tracking, main contract, prime contract, upstream payment application. So between you, wherever you sit in that hierarchy of people in this construction world, and anybody upstream of you, and then downstream of you have contracts, expenses, and payment applications or invoices. Change order tracking is a popular one, forecasting and progress tracking in here as well. Now, all of this stuff, when I talk about that information moving back and forth, we're talking about integrations. We at GRAITEC here have ERP Sync, and so that's an integration you can work with us to get sorted out within your systems. It'll help your information move from ACC cost over to your accounting software, ERP software. So I'll touch on that a little bit more later. So that's our kind of summary of what cost is. So on to the rest of it. So if you are thinking of moving towards cost management, the Autodesk Construction Cloud, if you're not using any of it, that's a big switch. If you are already using, let's say up to and including Build, but not yet Cost, what are you really trying to achieve if you're going to be moving to Cost? So we're looking to cost controls for our construction projects, better than what we are doing now. Efficiency boost over, again, what we're doing now. Enhanced collaboration, so no more silos. The people in accounting and the people in cost are transferring PDFs, exports from one system that need to be reformatted and go into the other system, etc. So we want to get that information moving back and forth. as well as in collaboration between us and our subcontractors or our owners, anybody else that we can bring into this system with us, and improve profitability, right? If we can make our projects run smoother on the overhead side, that's great. And also on the construction side. So if we can view or see problems with forecasting ahead of time, we're like, oh my God, we're going to run out of money too early. How do we address this now? That's going to improve profitability across the board. So these are the kind of goals that ideally we're all trying to achieve in any transition between one software and another, or the picking up of a new software if you aren't managing this with an existing solution right now. And so, there's some clients that they were early adopters. They've picked this up in the last couple of years. And so far, this is Levy Nass from Multigreen. There's a great, I don't want to call it white paper that you can download from the Autodesk site. They've moved to Autodesk. They see real benefits from it. They really enjoy the transparency of it. The capabilities are far beyond what they've seen before. And so it's allowing them to move that data, around and track information in real time. So this is just, one little quote about what documented people are saying. And so what do you need to get started on a cost integration or just implementation first, integration second? I joke that we need moxie, right? You need someone with a lot of enthusiasm for the processes in your company, so that they can be that champion and get this moving, get everybody involved who is going to need to be involved, and start having discussions. So good discussions internally. What are you trying to get out of this? And then engage a service partner. That's probably your best bet. You can try doing this all on your own. You can buy the software and work on it. But unless you've been on my side of the desk and now know what to do on your side of the desk, it's a big lift for someone internally to do it all on their own. So, getting started, you need to determine your own expectations of cost. Have thorough internal discussions about the requirements. Are you using a current system, and where is it failing you? Why are you even considering moving to another system? And what would that system have to offer you when you get there? Figure out what those where the gaps are in your knowledge about your own system and what another system could do for you, right? If you've got a problem in the current system you're in, how do we know that this other system is going to fill those blanks? And that's where you involve someone like GRAITEC or Autodesk to answer those questions. And I can't stress enough, ask those questions. Everybody talks high level in some of those early meetings. Have a second meeting and don't talk high level. Ask the nitty gritty sometimes and get them to show you, right? Sometimes seeing how it works is not just yes, it will fill our needs, but hey, this is actually going to expand what we can do, not just stopgap. And so, yeah, get that detailed information. Engage a service provider. I don't say this because that is my job. I say this because I've been on the other side with and been tasked by a company to implement something that you have only basic knowledge about. You've maybe taken a quick fundamentals course or a LinkedIn learning course. And during that course, you're like, wow, I understand this. I get it. And then you get into the real world and you're like, oh boy. So definitely engage someone who can help you, guide you, get some mentoring hours, get some training on the books so that you can make this go smoothly for everybody. So establishing roles and responsibilities is kind of the next step. Who's going to guide this process internally? Obviously, that hopefully has happened by now, but also for each team. So you've got your accounting side. I say accounting is not going to be in this system, but that doesn't mean we don't need their input. We need the cost codes. We need how they expect and what data they want to transfer between systems and in what format. We have to figure out our current workflows and what is and isn't working for us, right? When you transfer information to accounting, are they fixing stuff? Do they have to break down your estimate and reorganize it into their cost codes? And then, once we're starting training and we're getting up and running, we always want to test data in the system. So we're going to get a small completed project or something that's, ongoing but already in process. And we're going to treat this as a bit of a sandbox or a bit of experimentation. We're going to get some settings in there and we're going to take a look at how it works, so that all of the discussions we've had so far are actually going to come to be something tangible, because sometimes it's only then when you really see what that means to you and to all of the interconnected elements in the system. And if you're thinking of an integration, definitely talk to us about that or talk to someone about that, but don't get it going too soon. It's something that you want to fully understand cost before we get that integration going. I mean, as long as you've had a reasonable amount of training, we get everybody understanding that system, then we can start working on the integration. But I've definitely hopped into a few sessions that the integration has been started before we've started cost training, and by the time they get to me, they're so confused. They don't know, they don't understand what, they've been asked a lot and by the integration team, coming from some other third-party service, and once they get some cost training, all of a sudden everything starts to fall into place and make sense. And then we go back to the integration team and we start to maybe modify some of the choices they've made based on, some misunderstandings early on. So if you're thinking of an integration, give it some time to understand the cost system. So these are some of the things that I have definitely seen, given all of the integrations that I've done so far and the implementations on the cost side. If we start one or the other too early or too late, it doesn't go well. So finally, I want to say, do the homework. So when we start training, when I get people into the system and we get our budget codes sorted out, we'll have a week or two between sessions. And that is because there's work that needs to be done on your side, and you need to play in the system. And we don't play a lot as adults here, but this, you got to dig into it. You have to try things out. You have to try and break the system. Push what you want as far as you can go within the system, and then say, okay, well, that's my limit. That's where my budget starts to be displayed in a way I don't want, or that's where I start to lose the information because I've compressed it too much. And this is really going to help you ask us good questions during training and figure it out on your own and have that internal understanding of the system, because I'm going to say cost is robust. It is complex, and there's a lot of little connection pieces. So understanding where all of those go is obviously something that we do in training. I try and show you, when you do this, then you need to go and do this. And if you don't do that, then this won't work. But again, everybody knows that training can go in one ear and out the other because it's so much information at once. So we try and take it step by step. But all of that reinforcement, that homework that you can do on your own time with your team, is going to make the difference, after training sessions. So, when it comes to what people are doing right now, how are they getting their information into the system and moving it between systems? What trends are we seeing? And I would say we've got kind of three main ways to get things in and out of the system. We've got the out-of-the-box method, so we can enter line items manually. We can use a pre-formatted Excel that you can download from the system, fill it out, and upload it. So obviously the Excel, you could copy and paste from your accounting system, exports, paste it into your formatted Excel and upload it. When we talk about efficiency and some of these, the core goals that we were looking at the beginning. This doesn't sound like a very efficient manner, right? Manually transferring things between elements. So the more efficient way would be integration. So I mentioned this before. Integration is having something in the back end that takes information from the ERP or from cost and moves them in either direction. And which direction it moves, customizable. Again, we have some we have ERP Sync by GRAITEC. I have a couple of slides for that coming up. And then the third method is software called ProEst, Autodesk ProEst. And it's an estimation software. It's really big. It does a lot of stuff. I personally don't know it very well, but I do know that it integrates here. I've had a little bit of training on it, and I do know there is an integration with Autodesk Cloud, and it will push your estimation as you've filled it out in ProEst, and it will push it into cost management as a budget. And so, what are people doing? I would say, in all of the implementations that I've been going through in the last year, we've got, I'd say 10 to 15% of the people are keeping or staying with the out of the box. They're using Excel right now. That's what the team is comfortable with. They're not ready to go to an integration, or maybe the integration, the software they're using is not currently on the integrations list. So they can't. And so we're working through other solutions with them. So right now, minor numbers, they're doing it manually. I'd say 80% of the people are going with an integration. This is by far the most efficient and effective way to move that information around and have confidence in the fact that that information is being put where it's supposed to be put. There's no lost Excel files. If somebody goes on vacation before they finish an upload or forget a file, that will all happen automatically in the back end. And ProEst, I wouldn't call it an integration, but it is a bit of one. It will take your estimates on the ProEst side, push them over into the budget. Now the ProEst, then, that's about 5% of people, using the ProEst to get the budget in. But most of those then are still using an integration to complete the rest of the process. The budget is only almost even 5% of this process, right? It's the most important in some ways. I can't do anything in cost without a budget, but it's not. We can get that budget in other ways. So ProEst and an integration, or ProEst and some of the other out of the box items, are really they go together. All right, so just a little bit about ERP Sync. This and any other integration is going to move that data between these platforms as automatically and as customizedly as we can. So you're going to customize which direction everything is going in. That's my next slide. So, and really all of this is to, keep people from duplicate data entry, making mistakes, confusion of which file is the latest export from the ERP system, delays. Somebody, could have finished this before the meeting or lunch or a holiday, but they didn't. And now we're in the midst of everything previous in that list, right? So this is what an integration is aiming to solve for you. And this is what an integration would look like. You'll have costs on one side, you'll have your software, your ERP, your accounting software on the other side, and you've got all of these objects that need to go between them. And so these are kind of all the elements on the Autodesk Build side. They do have similar, sometimes different names in the ERP or accounting software, so we're using the Build terminology right now. And again, what I am seeing right now happening with our integrations, no matter what software we're using, something like vendors, you will have already a list of your companies, your vendors, your suppliers, everybody you are working with, most likely already in your in your system somewhere, in your ERP system. So we're going to take that through the integration and we're going to pop it over into Build. So that's the direction that information typically goes. Now this can go both directions. You can see my little blue arrows here. They're going in both directions because depending on the customizations that you choose with your integration team, you could go either way. But typically that's where vendors go. They come from your system and into Build. Then we go down all the way to the bottom of the list and we talk about payments. So payments, actually this is not the Build terminology. Build terminology would be expenses. So payments can be things like payroll, all of the miscellaneous expenses incurred on a project, a visa bill that has gas and paper and a new drill and materials that somebody forgot or needed to go and pick up on the site. All of those miscellaneous items. Again, they'll often originate through some sort of invoicing system on the ERP side or the accounting side, maybe through an automatic, you just send the invoice to an email, it pulls it into the system and sets it up there. So that information then, instead of manually entering it or uploading it into Autodesk Build, we're going to take it out of and into Build from the accounting system. In addition, we have contracts and change orders. So contracts is a list of your contracts, subcontracts, vendors, internal contracts that you are creating throughout the project. And this often is initiated in the build side. So we're going to build our contracts on the build side because that's where the structure exists for that format of item. And then we're going to take that, executed contract when it's been all signed and sorted out. And we're going to take that and push it into your accounting system. And same with change orders, right? Autodesk Build is a more robust system for creating those pieces of information and attaching it to all of the build and cost related workflows. And then all we really need is the end result of that. The change order is this much and attached to this budget item, and the contract is this much and attached to this budget item. So let's push that limited information back into QuickBooks, Sage, CMIC, and so those are a few of what I'm seeing today standards. They can go in either direction. It really depends on what system you're using and your workflows. Now, I've left out projects and budget codes and cost codes. Those are some of the ones that really, I wouldn't say I have too much of a standard. They can go in either direction, depending on, again, everything else in your system. So it's meant to be completely custom here. So, and benefits of the integration is to obviously negate all of the ones on a couple of slides ago, right? We want to streamline workflow. We do not want people downloading and uploading and forgetting about it. We want to make sure that collaboration is there. So when an expense comes in, it is integrated within the hour to the other systems so that people know how much money they've got left to spend. I want all of this information in cost so that I can see it all the time, and it is up to date, and I have no questions about that. Tighter cost controls, of course, accurate forecasting. So if we can get all the information into cost, it's going to assist in our ability to see to the end of the project and see where we're going to spend the most money, where we're going to run out of money before we anticipated. And so that is our goal of getting all of that information into and out of that system correctly. Okay, so now just a couple of slides on ProS, nothing detailed. There is an integration with ProS. So if by any chance you are using or considering ProS, and this is going to make a difference for you, in the Autodesk Build side of things, if you can go into the apps area, you can find the ProS app card, activate it here, and then you're going to go into the ProS side of things and activate the app in that big list of applications there, as well as then we can set up in-company setup on ProS. We can import project types and get our budget segments set up. So these budget segments will be set up if you are using an integration as well They will need to be coordinated with the integration. So let's say you're bringing them into Sage. They're going to have some requirements for that Sage integration. And that's kind of how I'm going to transition into this next part. So get that, check out your ProS, check out your build, see what kind of integrations you potentially already have in that apps list. And this is ProS. It's going to take what your estimators are going to work up in ProS, and it's going to push it over into your budget on the cost side, saving you definitely at least one step in there. All right. I'm going to take a sip of coffee before I keep talking. I don't know if there's any questions about that, but that's sort of what I've seen on the front end. Getting set up, getting started with those integrations and those decisions. Highly recommend an integration. Checking out ProS if you're already using it. It does integrate. Now, the budget code segments that I mentioned there at the end. Having them coordinated between systems is important. So with a ProS, connection, with an integration between systems, and even just with a manual upload, we need to make sure that our budget codes, and if you're not sure what I mean by budget codes, everybody's got a bit of a different terminology. Budget codes, budget segments, cost codes, estimation codes, CSI codes. I'm talking about that little bunch of numbers before the descripted estimated item that you're going to put money to. That code. Think about your current codes right now. Think about what you use. I don't know what part of this hierarchy are, if you're on the accounting side or if you're on the estimation side or somebody in the middle. But think about the codes you are currently using, and do you know what happens before you, what happens after you to that budget line item, and what code it's attached to? This is the first thing in any cost implementation that we will discuss is budget codes, making sure they are clear. And if formerly, I get a lot of people, we start working on this in the first day of class, and I say, what are your budget codes? And they go, well, there's like about 1,000 of them in the accounting system, but we only really use about 600 of them. And, I bet you some of them could be cleaned up. And this section, it was kind of thrown in there a couple of years ago when we started adding some different, scopes to our work. All right, good. So let's take this chance to standardize. We are going to get that budget, that 1,000 potential items, and we're going to clean it up to your 600. That chunk that doesn't really fit the rest of the numbering system, let's make it fit the rest of the numbering system. Do we need a whole new numbering system? Do we just need a new master code, right? Some sort of heading title that can now incorporate. Can they be filtered into the rest of the scopes? How are you going to set that budget code up is probably the single most important thing across everything. ProS has its own budget code system. Cost will take pretty much anything from ProS. There's some configuration we do, but cost will take it pretty much anything in. And if that's your only integration, that's fine. But if we're going to go into, again, an ERP or accounting system, the three of them, well, cost is just a middleman at that point, but the two end pieces will have to match. So we need the estimating team and the accounting team to be on the same team when it comes to budget codes. So this is something, if you're considering all of this, start looking at your budget segments, your budget codes, and make sure we can get this into some sort of streamlined estimation to accounting system of numbers, right? I want it to match all the way through. And The other reason we want to talk about this is, if you can see my little list here on the screen, budget segments first, hierarchy second. So when you get into, let's see what my next code is. Yes, perfect. When we get into setting up our codes in the system, we've got a little configurator here. And in this example, I have 3 segments to here. I've only blown up 2 because project number isn't very common. But I've got 3 segments here: project number, CSI number, and category. I'll elaborate on this in another slide here. But what this means within in the cost system is I can make any number of categories. So I can have project number dash CSI code or internal cost code, whatever that might be, dash, and then a cost category, labor, material, anything like that. This is where we're going to set up the structure of our code, which has to match ProEst, or in the case of ProEst, you would have no structure here because the structure is coming from ProEst. And then we make sure that that matches what our accounting system is going to want, or that we can map correctly. Depending on the system you're integrating with, there are different requirements here. Sage has some specific requirements. QuickBooks has different ones. So here I've got project number, CSI code, and category, and I set up basically the number of digits and any delimiters I want between those segments. So here's what it might look like. I have a project number that is set to info only, so it's basically just there in the background. I don't end up seeing it on every cost item. I've got my really important one, my CSI code or my cost code, happening with a dash, and then my BUD for budget, my budget or materials or labor. I got a 3-digit code for that. And these are pretty common. I'd say almost everybody works like this. I've had several with just one segment, CSI code or an internal budget code. And I've also seen one with 7 or 8 segments, up to like 32 letters. Those we're working on paring down because not all the integration systems will accept that much. And so, we've got a bunch of different code options here. We've got 3 digits, we've got 5 digits with a letter in there, we've got 6 digits with a hyphen in the middle or a period in the middle, and they're all internally generated. Everybody say, I always ask, are you using some version of a CSI code? And they say, no, we've got our own. And then they give it to me, and it's basically just some sort of a CSI code that they have tweaked or adjusted and put a dash in the middle of, but it's basically a CSI code. So what I see is that, the codes have been in this system or in the company for so long that people don't even know where they're coming from. And that's really, it doesn't matter. It's just from my point of view, sometimes that's funny to see. So here is the big picture in the middle is I'm just using out-of-the-box CSI codes here. And what we do and what we get uploaded is we upload sort of the master list of all of those codes or whatever your codes are in your system. And we break them down into a bit of a hierarchy. So we've got something like procurement and contract requirements. And then under that, we've got all of the other line items that would kind of be grouped under procurement. And then once I have that first segment, that would be this cost code segment here, then I have the category if I need it, or any other segments that I want to attach. So my budget item is going to be this dash labor. Okay, and so we can upload a 1-digit, a 3-digit, 2 numbers. It doesn't have to be anything. These are all completely customizable. We just want them to be organized and understandable from your system point of view. And so the description of, if I put a -D after one of those, it's, solicitation direct cost. So we're going to build in all of this stuff in your budget code. And so this is an important conversation that happens right at the beginning, and it can be a longer conversation with some clients, and the feedback that I get on this one is sometimes a little bit concerned because their code is very broken out. Maybe the estimators have hundreds of line items because they're looking at every element under, if I can go back, under, instructions, or under, these are the worst ones. I don't have any construction in here, right? They're looking at the MEP category and thinking about everything that this company does under that system and putting a number to it. And then everybody goes, oh my God, does that need to end up in my budget? Is my budget really going to be 700 line items? Do you want it to be? Because it doesn't have to be. That's where we get this hierarchy, and those, individual line items for all of the estimators' work, they can stay in the system, but really your budget is rolled up to that top category of rooms, MEP, roofing, landscaping, and then all of those little bits and pieces of it are for your information only. So your actual budget gets pared down to, 40, 50, 100 lines, and it can still be quite large, but it doesn't have to be as big as, let's say, what your estimators might go through on their end. All right, so here's just an example of what the budget might look like. We've got our budget code, and I've got this split out with the materials and labor and everything in its own category, but in the budget code segment, it's really just like a 14,000 GEN for general conditions or general costs. So we can pull it out into its own column in the budget, or we can have it as part of the code. Both ways, though, are really here, and I bring this back to like enhanced efficiency. We want to be efficient in this system, and if I have a massive budget, which is sometimes it's unavoidable, how can I roll this up into smaller segments and see only what I want to see? So by using an organized code system with that hierarchy, I won't go back a couple of slides, with that hierarchy of a master code or heading and all of the subcodes underneath it, we can roll up our budget into these main headings and very easily then go through what was a 500 line system down into our 16 or 48 kind of master code or CSI codes, and then just open them up from there. In another sense, if I've added a budget category like this, I can break it out and show me all of the fees or show me all of my labor grouped together. Now, what I didn't take a screenshot of, silly enough, and maybe I can show you in the real system, but then I have to switch screens, is what happens on the other side of this. So if I roll everything up, my totals change, and I can see my total labor. I can see my total internal or my total specialties. So I'm going to get those line items, and all of this data is going to be organized differently. So if I want to show you here, I've rolled all of this up into my labor category or my individual budget categories, and I get to see all of these. Original budget will never change, but now I can see my fees as a total over my general conditions and my internal labor and my external labor. So as I group and sort by these different elements, those numbers will change. Okay, so this is, we want that to be efficient for your team. If we use these often, and I don't want to have to keep going back between grouping and changing my grouping, when I find one I like, I can save that view. And so I can use that view. I can save it for my whole team if I'm an admin, and I can save it just for me if that's something that I need to see for my workflows. So those save views, then now I can just easily switch between what was a default view and is now a grouped view without going back to my filter and grouping. And then I can filter or group within that view as well. All right. So these are little things that don't often get elaborated on in demos, or why you might do this or where the benefits come from. And this is why I say ask those granular questions in some of your earlier meetings. Make sure and have them, show you what it can do, because those are the fun parts. Those are, for me, what push a lot of clients over the edge, is that they start to see how we can roll all of these budgets together, how we can view them, and they take away the fear of an 800 line budget. So now I think that is where. So I talked about the budget codes, and I'm not talking about any of the other upstream items because time and, there's just so many things to discuss. So I'm going to move now into the downstream to talk about the number of things that we can customize on that side of things and where I see trends going in that direction. So costs. There are a lot of downstream parts to this. So we have our contract and expenses, and here I've got custom contract and expense types. So when we talk about making the system yours and what you can do within the system, definite feedback I've had from clients is that it's extremely customizable, and that can lean in both directions, good and not bad, but extensive or time consuming. If you're planning on just opening the box and jumping in, this is not the kind of system for that. It's not a one size fits all system in the sense that it is ready to go. There's work that needs to be done to make it yours. So we already talked about that on the budget side. Just getting those budget codes set up is one of the most important things you can do. And then on the downstream side, or the cost and contract side, now we get to customize, because this system is built for developers, general contractors, subcontractors, and first of all, no two subcontractors will do the same things the same, let alone two developers or GCs, even though we're all looking for the same functions. Everybody's got a slightly different workflow. And so first of all, I want to get into our custom contract type, but I decided to do permissions first because no matter where you sit in this system, right, you're in the middle of your own world. There's somebody above you and there's somebody below you. Even if you're a subcontractor, you have subs, you have vendors, you have suppliers. To make this fully, to bring in that collaboration aspect of this, the more people in the system, the better. So I brought up permissions here, and I've got, Emily and Lady McDuck here. They're my subcontractors, and they're in the system with me, and I want them to have access to be able to collaborate with me in the system. So I have them set up on 4 things here: contracts, cost payment applications, change order requests, and requests for change order or quotations, and supplier change orders. So those 4 columns are things that my subs or sub-subs will need access to if I want them in the system. And there's 2 levels. With some of them there's 2, with some of them there's only 1. Basically, there's view and respond to items assigned to their company. So they'd log into their own system and they would see the contract that I have assigned to them. They will see the payment applications that I have sent to them. They will see a request for quotation. But what I really want is for them to also be able to edit and respond within the system to that. So then we have this second level of collaboration here: create cost payment application, as well as to view and respond. So now you're not the one creating a cost payment application to get it started for someone downstream to come and review. Why is that your problem? It's their work. If you give them access to the system, they create that payment application. They submit it to you for review. You accept or request a revision. They revise and again submit it through that system. So everything stays inside and is that single source of truth that we're kind of searching for with this. So when it comes to collaboration, and you think, well, every builder I use has a different set of forms, or every vendor I use requires a different format. There's a little bit of setup there, but if we can get that form, we can get that into the system with the right information, and then everybody's happy. The forms are uniform. You don't have to do extra work, on the per each payment application, it's already set up. So permissions is something that we kind of add as an after effect, but it really affects our level of ability of collaboration, or to collaborate with people in the system. Okay, now the customization of the system. So how do we make it yours? So contract types, there's 4 out of the box here: subcontract, purchase order, consultant, and internal. They're there, and they are some of the most common that we see. And when I do training and I go in and we talk about this with people, some people are like, yep, those are fine. But in another sense, this little word cloud represents kind of the extent of what we can add. So we can customize this list. You can have any type of contract in there that you want, and you can deactivate anything that you don't want. So of those 4 original, we can deactivate if you don't have a lot of, consultant contracts. So it depends on who you are, but this is sort of a spread of what I see that gets customized. I don't have a little word cloud for expense customizations, but right now we have internal and invoice, I think, are the 2 major ones. But we can add to that list. So something I might show shortly before I run out of time is the settings on the cost side. The settings are robust. If you've ever been through the build settings, they are also extensive. There's tons of stuff to get sorted out, but then all of these things happen inside a project template, and every project I start will have all of this information in it, and we can trust it to be correct. So that's where I've got things like just as simple as units of measure. Are you in Canada or are you in the US? Are you in basically the US or the rest of the world? So we've got things like budget and contract allocation, how I want to be able to split up my budget into contracts. Rounding settings, right? Are you on the development level and you don't care about the cents? Okay, we'll round up to the nearest dollar. Are you on the sub level and you care about the cents? Maybe you don't, I don't know. Round it down, okay? So documents and attachments, I've been mentioning those customized documents. These are the things that we, wrong location of documents, but we set up those documents here under budget, cost, or change order document templates, and we upload 1 or multiple PCO or RFQ documents so that all the different vendors or all of the different builders that I need to create documentation for are here and accessible. You can have more than 1 company template if you have, development projects versus construction projects, and they have an entirely different workflow and set of information. So really, I just want you to fully see how customizable this system is and why we encourage an assistance in the setting up of all of this, because there's a lot of things to go through here, and explanation is worthwhile for some of them, and understanding how they connect. Like this first setting that I picked, all of the documentation that we generate within the cost system can be stored inside the docs system or inside the files area here. And so we can put it in a specific folder, and what ends up happening is within that specific folder, financials, it gets broken out into either individual items or individual companies. So every time you generate documentation for that company, Revit, Autodesk will automatically store it in that company's folder under budget, under cost payment applications, under COs, and you can go and both you and that company, if you've given them permission to access that folder, have a single source of information about this project specifically, and we can all access it. You can't dispute something when you're both looking at the same object. And so this level of customization is one of the key attractors, I think, right now to cost. I was training somebody recently, and he was just visibly excited about, he said he's been working with PM systems and accounting systems for 7 years, and never had he seen anything as flexible as this, as robust as this, and he was just really excited about being able to work within this system. So not everybody's as visibly enthusiastic as this person was, but it's a good system in it, and if we could get some good customization in there and get it set up well, it does work very smoothly. I had a couple of other little items, just again the same things I showed in the settings there, and we're almost out of time. So one thing I will touch on is review workflows. Again, customizing these, getting that efficiency, getting that collaboration in. If I need to send out a contract, I build the contract in the system. I need to have 2 or more people review it internally. I can set up a workflow that when I hit the send button on that contract, it goes to development and they start to review it. They have 3 work days to review it, and they say, great, it looks good to me, proceed. It goes on to the next person. So I mix these up, it goes on to the executive. Executive reviews it, can make comments on it, and otherwise proceed to another reviewer or approve it officially, and then it goes to the vendor or the supplier or the contractor on the other end. So it gets that internal workflow again all throughout the system. All of those records are kept on who did what when, and it gets to the vendor and they sign it and return it inside of the system. So internal collaboration is really important if you're using any of the other aspects of Build, all the way from docs with review workflows down to Build. This workflow should be familiar to you. So we can set up to like a 12-step review. It always kills me. Like, I don't want to be part of a 12-step review. Like, that sounds so insane. But I'm sure it happens. Otherwise, it wouldn't be here. So review workflows, talking about collaboration. This is one of the major things that a lot of people are setting up. Now, if I had time, I was going to go through some what's new. And I mean, we do have a few minutes. There are some resources online to follow for this. And I think I have them in my other browser. So if you just Google what's new in cost management for 2024, every 3 months there is a new release of things for the cloud, the ACC cloud, and sometimes cost gets more than others. So this month had some really nice ones for cost, so you can check out both the Autodesk Build Help area. We'll always have a what's new segment in the top area, so you can look back and see what was new in the last 4 releases. So Mark had some good ones. They're starting to really kick up the homepage and the number of cards that we can get on here. There was some additional collaborators added to the budget tool. So in that prime contract, if you need not just the owner and or architect to review it, you've got additional people needing visibility on that, we can now add additional collaborators in here. That was a highly sought after feature. Internal budget transfers, the ability to add a new budget when you're transferring funds between 2 budget line items. If that fund you need to move it to is not there, we can create that new budget. This is complex, so we've got some new if formula options within our custom columns. So when we look at our large budget report, budget view, where we can see all of our budget items and the money moving around, we can get some custom columns and some new non-numerical formulas in there. So if the CSI code is this, then do this. So they used to rely solely on numbers, but now we can do non-numerical. So that's exciting. More about those if statements and the robustness of them. In our cost tool, in our payment applications, we can highlight what the supplier might need to fill out, right? You see those orange areas. So some of them are big, some of them are little, but these were requested by someone at some point. So they're really working hard on those feature requests. Different schedule of values breakdown, editing those hierarchies, and so on. So you can check this out, help.autodesk.com, and I'm not sure if we got that into the resources list, but sometimes we have I have resources there. I was a little late getting some things into poor Misty. So if they're there, terrific. You can click on them. If they're not, we have help.autodesk.com, and then you go into the What's New area. And this one, it's autodesk.com in the blogs area, under construction, and then new in. So there was a March update that you can look for. So that's where we can source some of that information. And to leave us off with one last quote, again, sorry, I forgot to change the name. This is by, I can't remember his first name, but same company, Multigreen. They say that Autodesk is just making their workflow simpler, right? It's intuitive, it's easy to use, the teams are positive about using it, and so far I've had nothing but positive, feedback on a lot of these features. There are some things that need adjustment, there are some things that still need tweaking, and Autodesk is working on that. And nothing is perfect, so sometimes we find our best way of working within the system, and so far I have been able to find a decent solution for most people in what they've been asking for, and sometimes we submit a feature request.